Canada and the United States are two of the most tightly connected economies in the world. And look, we share the world's longest undefended border. We also trade over $1 trillion in goods and services every single year. But what happens when that relationship is put under pressure? What happens when a US president, like Donald Trump, says Canada is getting too good of a deal? And not just Canada, but most countries, and threatens new tariffs on Canadian oil, steel, aluminum, and even auto. This isn't theoretical. In early 2025, Trump floated a 10% baseline tariff on Canadian oil and gas, suggesting we were taking advantage of the United States. He then followed up with threats of 25% and even 50% when Doug Ford so boldly stood up to him with electricity duties and then backed down about 3 hours later. Now, whether you support Trump or not, his negotiating style is consistent. Maximize leverage, bring manufacturing home, and reward countries that align with U.S. interests. So here's my question. What should Canada do, or what at least can they do? Because let's be clear, we don't just get to sit this one out. 3 out of every 4 Canadian exports go to the United States. If trade with the U.S. is weaponized, we feel that in jobs, prices, and long-term economic security. And look, unfortunately, we're already seeing signs of that. In April 2025, General Motors announced a wind down of electric van production at its CAMI assembly plant in Ingersoll, Ontario, leading to the layoff of all 1,200 workers until October. Only about 700 are expected to return when production resumes. Similarly, Stellantis temporarily paused operations at its Windsor, Ontario assembly plant, idling approximately 4,500 workers. These shutdowns have also affected the United States. Facilities, they are affected, but not as bad, with just about 900 workers laid off in Indiana and Michigan. You see, every decision that the United States makes impacts us more than them. Honda forecasted the tariffs will hit profits hard and just stall the $15 billion investment in Canadian EV plants that just about a year ago, the provincial government here in Ontario bragged about investing in. This is what happens when policy uncertainty becomes economic reality. So, in this episode, I want to do something a little bit different. I'm not here to take sides. I'm not here to fearmonger. I want to walk you through the actual strategy Canada could take, because there's so many questions in the air. How can we know the steps that Canada might take? Well, here are some probable ones. We'll break down why simply replacing the US as a trade partner isn't super realistic, what leverage Canada does have, and how we can position ourselves in a way that actually helps both countries win. So let's start with the hard truth. And I say this with no political spin. Canada can simply not afford to go toe-to-toe in a trade war. We are the smaller economy and the more trade-dependent partner. So the idea of a full-on tariff war where both sides hurt equally, it doesn't really hold up. So it makes the point pretty clear. Retaliation isn't the best answer. With our economy, GDP being around 2 to 3 trillion and the United States being just near 30, the numbers don't lie. When Canada responded to U.S. steel tariffs back in 2018 with our own duties on things like bourbon, ketchup, and orange juice, yeah, it made headlines in Canada, but it really didn't change the deal. It didn't fix the underlying power imbalance. So here's my question. What does fix it? You see, some Canadians say, just walk away, trade more with Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And in theory, yeah, that sounds really appealing. But in practice, it may fall apart quite quickly. Let's take natural gas as an example. Europe has been asking for Canadian LNG for years, especially after Russia invaded Ukraine. They want our energy, but we never built the infrastructure to deliver it. No major LNG terminals on the East Coast, no national pipeline network connecting supply to ports, and no global shipping routes from our fields to their markets. So even if they're ready to buy, we can't sell it in large volume. And building that capacity, it'll take 5 to 10 years, long after Trump is gone and long after this trade pressure has played out. The same story with Asia. Yes, they're growing, but distance, diplomacy, and logistics make them decades away from being a true replacement for the world's largest consumer economy, the United States market. And with that, we'll be back with more to discuss Canada's strategy, what they can actually do to overcome these tariff threats. See you soon.